I am Joshua, 28 years old, and my brother punched me into a wall during Thanksgiving dinner because I asked a question about the family business. I was bleeding, dazed, and ready to defend myself, but the person who stopped the fight wasn't who I expected. Before I tell you about the moment I took down a multimillion-dollar empire with a single USB drive, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. It started with the cars. It always starts with the cars in my family. I pulled my beat-up Ford F-150 into the circular driveway of my father's estate. The gravel crunched under my tires, a rough, working-class sound that didn't belong there. Parked in front of the massive oak double doors were the crown jewels of the North Star legacy. On the left, my father's phantom black Rolls-Royce. On the right, a brand new, obnoxious yellow Lamborghini Urus. That belonged to Caleb. Caleb is my older brother, the golden child, the vice president of everything. I sat in my truck for a minute, gripping the steering wheel. My knuckles were white. I didn't want to be there. I had a job I actually liked, managing fleet operations for a mid-sized logistics company across town. It wasn't glamorous. I dealt with mechanics, unions, and blown tires. I didn't deal with galas or ribbon-cutting ceremonies. But every year, obligation dragged me back here. I walked in, and the smell of expensive cologne and roasted turkey hit me. The house was cold, though. It was always cold. The marble floors, the high ceilings, the portraits of ancestors who probably never smiled a day in their lives. It all felt like a museum, not a home. There he is. Caleb's voice boomed from the living room. The working man returns. He was holding a crystal tumbler of scotch, wearing a suit that cost more than my annual salary. He looked perfect. That was his job, looking perfect. "Hey, Caleb," I said, trying to keep it neutral. My father, Robert, didn't even look up from his phone. "You're late, Joshua. We have guests arriving at 7. Go change." "I am changed, Dad," I said, looking down at my button-down shirt and slacks. "You look like you fixed the trucks, not managed them." Evelyn, my stepmother, chimed in. She was arranging flowers with the precision of a surgeon. She didn't look at me either. To her, I was just a stain on the carpet that wouldn't quite wash out. The dinner was a disaster from the appetizers. We sat at the long mahogany table, Dad at the head, Evelyn opposite him, Caleb on the right, and me on the left. Sarah, Caleb's wife, sat next to him. She was quiet, too quiet. She kept her head down, cutting her food into tiny, microscopic pieces. Caleb started on his third drink. "So, Josh," he sneered, "still playing with the little trucks? I heard your company lost the Amazon contract." "We didn't lose it," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We renegotiated. Better margins." "Margins?" Caleb laughed. "Cute. Dad and I just closed the acquisition of the Port Authority deal. 50 million on the table. That's real logistics. Not whatever it is you do." I looked at my father. "Is that true?" "The port deal went through." Robert nodded, finally acknowledging my existence. Caleb handled the negotiations perfectly. I knew for a fact that wasn't true. I worked in the industry. The rumors were that North Star had bribed 3 city officials to get that deal. "I heard there were some compliance issues," I said. "Something about the environmental impact reports being falsified?" The room went silent. The clinking of silverware stopped. Caleb's face turned a shade of red that clashed with his tie. "What did you say?" "I'm just saying be careful," I said, taking a sip of water. "If the audits come through—" "You jealous little rat," Caleb spat. He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "You come into my house, drink my wine, and try to lecture me on business? It's Dad's house, Caleb," I reminded him. That was the trigger. Caleb lunged across the table. He was fast for someone who'd been drinking. He grabbed my collar and yanked me up. I tried to shove him back, but he swung. His fist connected with my jaw, a solid, heavy impact that sent sparks across my vision. I stumbled back, my feet tangling in the rug. I hit the wall hard. Crash. 2 framed photos, one of Caleb graduating Yale, one of the whole family skiing in Aspen, where I was conveniently in the back row. Shattered on the floor, I tasted copper. Blood was trickling from my lip. The adrenaline kicked in. I wasn't the scrawny kid anymore. I was 28. I hauled tires and worked on docks. I clenched my fists, ready to launch myself at him. I was going to break his nose. I deserved to break his nose. Stop! A hand grabbed my shoulder. A strong grip. I turned, expecting to see Dad holding Caleb back, expecting him to tell his golden boy to calm down. But Robert wasn't holding Caleb. He was holding me. He shoved me back against the wall, pinning my arms. Caleb was standing there, panting, adjusting his cuffs, looking like the victim. Dad, let go, I growled. He punched me. Enough, Robert hissed. His eyes were cold, like steel. Look at what you've done. You've upset your mother. I looked at Evelyn. She was sipping her wine, looking bored. Sarah was trembling, clutching her napkin. He hit me first, I yelled. I don't care, Robert said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You provoke him. You always have. You come here with your cheap clothes and your petty jealousy, trying to undermine him. Undermine him? He's a drunk and a bully. Robert's grip tightened on my arm. It hurt. Listen to me clearly, Joshua. Caleb is the face of this family. He is the future of North Star. You touch him, you lay a single finger on him, and you will regret it. Do you understand? I will not let you ruin what we have built. The words hung in the air. He's the face. You will regret it. It wasn't just anger. It was a threat. My own father was threatening me to protect the man who just assaulted me. I looked at Caleb. He was smirking. That same smirk he had when he was 12 and pushed me out of the treehouse. That look that said, I can do anything, and they will love me for it. I looked at Evelyn. Nothing. I looked at Sarah. She looked up for a split second. Her eyes were terrified. She mouthed something I couldn't catch, then looked back down. Get out, Robert said, releasing me with a shove. I wiped the blood from my lip. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from a rage so pure it felt like it was burning a hole in my stomach. Fine, I said. Enjoy your dinner. I hope the Port Authority deal is worth it. I turned and walked out. I didn't look back. I marched through the heavy oak doors, down the stone steps, and into the cool night air. My truck was there, a beacon of reality in this fantasy world. I got in, slammed the door, and jammed the key into the ignition. I revved the engine, drowning out the silence of the estate. I drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. I made it about 5 miles down the canyon road before I realized I didn't have my wallet. Or my phone. I patted my pockets. Empty. I had left my jacket on the back of the chair in the dining room. Damn it! I slammed my hand on the steering wheel. Couldn't go back. I couldn't face them. But my ID, my credit cards, everything was in there. And I needed gas. I pulled over to the side of the dark road. I took a deep breath. I had to go back. But I wasn't going to walk through the front door. I wasn't going to give Caleb the satisfaction of seeing me return. I turned the truck around. I killed the headlights as I approached the estate, parking a quarter-mile down the road near the service entrance. I knew a way in. I used to sneak out this way when I was a teenager to meet friends. I slipped through a gap in the hedge. The house was lit up like a castle. I could see shadows moving in the dining room. They were still eating. They had probably already forgotten I was there. I crept around the back, towards the patio doors. My plan was simple. Sneak into the mudroom, grab my jacket which I hoped the maid had moved, and leave. But as I passed the library window I heard voices. Raised voices. I crouched low in the bushes. The window was cracked open a few inches to let out cigar smoke. Careless Robert. He's asking questions. It was Evelyn. Her voice wasn't bored anymore. It was sharp. He knows nothing, Robert's voice replied. He's a mechanic. He doesn't understand corporate structure. He asked about the shares, Evelyn said. If he digs into the trust. If he finds out about Maria. My heart stopped. Maria. Maria was my mother. My biological mother. She died when I was 2. Car accident. That's what I was always told. Dad married Evelyn a year later. Maria is dead and buried. Robert snapped. And the trust is locked tight until he's 30. By then, I'll have moved the assets to the offshore accounts. He'll get a stipend, nothing more. The company belongs to Caleb. And what if he finds the box? Evelyn asked. You were supposed to burn it. I couldn't, Robert said, his voice dropping. It's leverage, in case the lawyers ever turn on us. It's in the attic, behind the ventilation unit. No one goes up there. I sat in the dirt, the cold seeping into my jeans. My head was spinning. The trust, the offshore accounts, Maria, the box in the attic. I wasn't just the black sheep. I was a liability they were actively managing. And there was money, my money, that they were stealing. I forgot about my wallet. I forgot about the blood on my lip. I looked up at the 3rd floor dormer window. The attic. I wasn't leaving tonight. Not yet. I was going hunting. The trellis on the north side of the house was covered in ivy, thicker than it had been when I was 16. I tested my weight on the bottom rung. It held. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was insane. I was breaking into my own father's house. But after what I just heard about the trust, about Maria, about the lies, I felt like a stranger infiltrating enemy territory. I climbed. The wood groaned softly, but the wind through the canyon masked the sound. I reached the 3rd floor balcony, the one attached to the old guest suite nobody used. The door was locked, but I knew the trick. Lift the handle, shimmy it to the left. Click. I slipped inside. The air was stale, smelling of dust and mothballs. I moved through the dark hallway, guided by memory and the moonlight filtering through the windows. The house was quiet now. The dinner must be over. I reached the pull-down ladder for the attic. This was the risky part. It was squeaky. I waited for the rumble of the central heating to kick on, masking the noise as I pulled the cord. The attic was a cavern of shadows. Old furniture draped in white sheets looked like ghosts standing in judgment. I used the flashlight on my watch, a small tactical thing I used for inspections. Behind the ventilation unit. That's what Dad said. I crawled over boxes of Christmas decorations and old tax returns. The ventilation unit was a massive silver beast in the corner. I squeezed behind it. There it was. A metal lockbox. Not dusty. Someone had touched this recently. I dragged it out. It was locked, obviously. But I looked around. Dad was a creature of habit. He hid keys in magnetic boxes. I felt along the metal beam above me. Bingo! A small magnetic key hider. My hands were shaking as I fit the small key into the lock. Inside were papers. Stacks of them. The first thing I saw was a birth certificate. Joshua David Morgan. Mother, Maria Elena Santos. Father, Robert Morgan. But underneath it was a document titled Custody Relinquishment and Non-Disclosure Agreement. I frowned, angling the light. It was dated 26 years ago. I, Maria Santos, agree to relinquish full physical and legal custody of Joshua Morgan in exchange for. The sum was blanked out, but there was a signature. It was shaky, erratic. I dug deeper. There was a leather-bound journal. The cover was worn. I opened it. The handwriting was elegant but hurried. September 12, 1998. He says he will take him. He says I am unfit because I don't have his money. He has lawyers who can prove black is white. They told me if I don't sign, they will plant drugs in my apartment. They will make sure I go to jail and never see Josh again. I have to sign. It's the only way to keep him safe. October 4th, 1998. I signed. I feel like I have died. He is taking my baby. He promises Josh will have a better life. A wealthy life. But I know Robert. He doesn't want a son, he wants an heir. And since he already has Caleb, he just wants to erase his mistake. Tears blurred my vision. She didn't die in a car crash when I was 2. She was forced out. She was blackmailed. I flipped to the end. November 1999. I am sick. The stress, the grief. The doctor says it's my heart. I'm sending this diary to Mrs. Higgins at the elementary school. She was the only one who was kind to me. If anything happens to me, I want Josh to know. I loved him. I never wanted to leave. Mrs. Higgins, my kindergarten teacher. Why was this diary here? Had Dad intercepted it? At the bottom of the box, I found something else. A thick file labeled Trust Fund. Joshua D. Morgan. I skimmed the legal jargon. It was established by my grandfather, Robert's father. He knew about me. He knew I was the illegitimate son, and he apparently didn't trust Robert. He had left 40% of the company voting shares to me, to be released upon my 30th birthday, or, I squinted at the fine print, or in the event of gross misconduct by the current trustee, Robert Morgan. My blood ran cold. I wasn't just a mechanic. I was the majority shareholder in waiting. Dad and Caleb owned 30% each. If I claimed my 40%, I could outvote either of them. If I allied with the board, I could control the whole damn thing. That's why they treated me like dirt. That's why they wanted me to feel small, worthless, and unconnected to the family. They needed me to stay away so they could siphon the assets before I turned 30. I took the birth certificate, the diary, and the trust documents. I shoved them down my shirt. Then I saw a USB drive taped to the inside lid of the box. I peeled it off and pocketed it. I was about to close the box when I heard a noise. Footsteps. Directly below me. I froze. I can't do this anymore, Robert. A voice sobbed. It was Sarah. I crept to the attic hatch, which I had left slightly ajar. Light spilled up from the hallway below. You will do it. Robert's voice was low, threatening. You enjoy the lifestyle, don't you? The cars, the private schools for Lily? If you leave Caleb, you leave with nothing. The prenup is ironclad, and I will sue for full custody of Lily. You'll be lucky to see her on weekends. He hits me. Sarah cried, her voice muffled, like she was covering her mouth. He hit Lily today because she spilled juice on the rug. She's 6, Robert. My fists clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. Caleb was hitting his daughter. Discipline is necessary, Robert said coldly. Caleb is under a lot of pressure. He's the face of this family. You need to support him, not provoke him. Support him? Sarah sounded hysterical. He's a monster. He is a Morgan, Robert snapped. And so are you. Now wash your face. Put on some concealer. We have guests downstairs who want to meet the happy couple. I heard a door slam, then silence. I lay there on the dusty floorboards, my entire body vibrating with rage. They were trapping her just like they trapped my mother, threatening to take the child, using money as a weapon. Couldn't just leave. I needed to get out, yes, but I needed a plan. I waited another hour until the house was completely silent. I climbed back down the trellis, the documents crinkling against my chest. When I got back to my truck, I didn't drive home. I drove to a 24-hour diner on the edge of town. I ordered black coffee and sat in the back booth. I pulled out the USB drive. I didn't have my laptop, but I knew who did. I called Marcus. Marcus was my college roommate, a guy who worked in cybersecurity for a bank. It was 2 a.m. Josh, he answered, groggy. Dude, it's late. I need you, I said. I have a USB drive. And I have a war to start. Where are you? The diner on 4th. Bring your rig. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later, wearing pajama pants and a hoodie. He took one look at my split lip and the dried blood on my shirt. Who hit you? Caleb? Yeah, I said. But that doesn't matter. Plug this in. He opened his laptop and inserted the drive. His fingers flew across the keyboard. It's encrypted. AES 256. Standard corporate stuff. Give me 10 minutes. I sipped my coffee, watching the progress bar. Got it, Marcus said. Whoa, what is it? It's an archive, Marcus whispered. Emails, HR reports, settlements. He turned the screen toward me. Subject, harassment complaint, Assistant J. Doe. From HR Director to Robert Morgan. Robert, the girl is asking for $50,000 to stay quiet. Caleb admits he cornered her in the elevator. If this gets out, the IPO is dead. I recommend we pay. Reply from Robert. Pay her. Then fire her for performance issues 3 months later. Make sure she signs the NDA. There were dozens of them. Caleb wasn't just a bully at home. He was a predator at work. And Dad was the cleaner. This is it, Marcus said. This is nuclear. It's not enough, I said, staring at the screen. They have lawyers. They'll say the emails are faked. They'll bury this in court for years. So what do you need? I need a witness, I said. I need someone they can't buy. I thought about Sarah, the fear in her eyes. He hit Lily, and I thought about Mrs. Higgins. The diary said she knew the truth about my mother. I need to make a call, I said. Now? No, I said, checking my watch. First thing in the morning. But first, I need to send a message. I pulled out my phone, which I had retrieved from my jacket before escaping, and found Sarah's number. We hadn't spoken in years, not really. Just polite nods at holidays. Sarah, it's Josh. I heard everything tonight. I know about Lily. Don't delete this. I can help. Meet me at the old park by the river tomorrow at 9 a.m. Come alone. I hit send. I sat back. The war had begun. I wasn't just fighting for my inheritance anymore. I was fighting for Maria, for Sarah, for Lily, and for the kid I used to be, the one who thought he deserved the bruises. The park by the river was deserted on a Tuesday morning, shrouded in a gray mist that felt appropriate for the clandestine nature of my meeting. I sat on a damp bench, watching the water churn. My jaw ached where Caleb had punched me, a throbbing reminder of why I was here. At 9:05 a.m., a black Porsche Cayenne pulled into the lot. Sarah. She didn't get out immediately. She sat there for a long time. I could see her checking her mirrors, looking for tails. She was living in a war zone, I realized. Every move was calculated. Finally, the door opened. She wore a trench coat and large designer sunglasses, despite the overcast sky. She walked toward me, her heels clicking on the pavement. Josh, she said, her voice tight. She didn't sit down. She stood ready to run. Thank you for coming, I said. You shouldn't have texted me, she whispered, looking around. Robert monitors the data plans. If he sees. I used an encrypted app, I lied, though I planned to install one on her phone immediately. Sarah, take off the glasses. No, please. She hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached up. She slid the glasses off. I inhaled sharply. Her left eye was swollen shut, a grotesque shade of purple and yellow. Caleb? I asked, though I knew the answer. She nodded, tears welling up in her good eye. He didn't like the way I looked at the waiter last night, said I was flirting. And Lily? I asked gently. Sarah crumpled. She sat down on the bench, burying her face in her hands. He pushed her. She fell. She has a bruise on her arm. She's terrified of him, Josh. She wets the bed every time she hears his car in the driveway. We're going to stop him, I said. I promise you. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. How? He's untouchable. You know Robert. He owns the police chief. He owns the judges. I went to a divorce lawyer last year. 2 days later, Robert called me into his office and played a recording of my meeting with the lawyer. He has eyes everywhere. He doesn't have this, I said, tapping the pocket where the USB drive was. I found his stash, Sarah. The HR cover-ups. The payoffs. It won't stick, she said hopelessly. It's just paper. It's a start. But I need more. I need the room. What room? The study, where Robert keeps the physical files. Or wherever he records those meetings. Sarah wiped her eyes. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. You're different today, Josh. You usually just take it. I'm done taking it, I said. I found my birth certificate, Sarah, and a trust fund. I own 40% of the company. Her eyes widened. The rumors were true. You knew. Caleb jokes about it when he's drunk. Says he's spending the bastard's money. before the bastard figures it out. That ignited a fresh wave of anger in my chest. Help me, Sarah. Help me protect Lily. If we take them down, you get custody. You get the alimony. You get freedom. She took a deep breath. There's something you should know. I didn't just sit there and take it, Josh. I tried to protect myself. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, sleek device. It looked like a car key fob. What is that? It's a recorder, she said. High fidelity. Voice activated. I hid one in Robert's Rolls-Royce about 3 months ago, under the passenger seat. He never cleans that car himself, and the detailers are too scared to touch anything under the seats. My jaw dropped. You bugged the Rolls? I wanted to know if he was cheating on Evelyn, she admitted. I thought maybe I could use it for leverage, but I got so much more. Josh, he makes calls from that car. Safe calls. He thinks it's a secure line. Do you have the files? They upload to a cloud server whenever the car is near the garage Wi-Fi. I have hours of audio. Sarah, I said, grinning for the first time in days, you are a genius. We spent the next hour in my truck. It was safer than the park bench. Sarah logged into a hidden cloud account on her phone. We listened. Audio file, October 14th. Robert's voice. Listen to me, Julian. The audit is coming. Shift the debt to the subsidiary. Yes, the one Josh manages. If it goes under, we blame his incompetence. Kills 2 birds with 1 stone. We wash the debt, and we discredit him so the board never accepts him. I felt sick. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was setting me up to take the fall for corporate fraud. Audio file, November 1st. Caleb's voice. Dad, that girl from accounting is calling again. Robert. I told you to handle it. Caleb. I did. I threatened her visa, but she says she has texts. Robert. Bring her to the office on Saturday. I'll have Miller arrest her for corporate espionage. We'll plant the files on her laptop. My God. I whispered. They frame people. This is our ammunition, Sarah said. But what do we do with it? If we go to the police, Miller will just bury it. We don't go to the police, I said. Not yet. We go to the public. We go to the people who give them their power. The gala, Sarah realized. The business leader of the year gala, I confirmed. Saturday night. Caleb is accepting the award. The whole board will be there. The press. The investors. Robert is controlling the AV booth, Sarah said. He's paranoid about technical glitches. I can handle the tech, I said, thinking of Marcus. But I need you to get me something else. I need the original copy of my mother's surrender form. The one in the attic. I need to prove coercion. I can get it, she said. Caleb is going to a bachelor party tonight. Robert and Evelyn have a charity dinner. The house will be empty. Be careful, I warned. If they catch you. I'm doing this for Lily, she said, her voice finding a new steeliness. I'm not afraid anymore, Josh. I'm just angry. I watched her drive away. I felt a strange sense of pride. They had pushed us into corners, made us feel weak. But they forgot that cornered animals are the most dangerous. I drove straight to Marcus's apartment. He was already awake, surrounded by energy drink cans. You look terrible, he greeted me. I have audio, I said, tossing my phone on his desk. Hours of it. Robert admitting to fraud, bribery, and framing employees. Marcus's eyes lit up. Christmas came early. We need to splice this, I said. Make a highlight reel. Video from the USB, audio from the car. We're gonna make a movie, Marcus. A horror movie. For the gala? Marcus grinned. I can get into the hotel system. It's a generic Wi-Fi setup. But the projector is usually hardwired. We need physical access to the control room. I know someone, I said. Chloe. Chloe was a girl I went to high school with. She worked for the event planning company that handled all of Northstar's events. We had dated briefly in our senior year before Dad forced me to break it up because she was blue collar. I called her. She was hesitant. Josh, I could lose my job. she said. Chloe, these people are criminals. They're abusing women. They're framing innocent employees. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. Just leave a door unlocked. Look the other way for 5 minutes. There was a long silence. Is it true about Caleb? She asked quietly. The rumors about how he treats women? It's worse, I said. I have proof. Okay, she said. The technical director takes a smoke break at 7:45 p.m., right before the speeches start. I'll make sure the side door is propped. Thank you, Chloe. Just make sure he gets what he deserves, she said. I hung up. The pieces were falling into place. But there was one loose end. The emotional core. The legal proof that the family foundation was built on a lie. I needed to see Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins lived in a small, sun-bleached bungalow on the south side of town. It was a humble place, surrounded by rose bushes that had seen better days. She had been my kindergarten teacher, a warm, grandmotherly figure who used to give me extra crackers when I didn't bring a lunch, which happened often, despite my family's wealth. Evelyn often forgot to pack one. I knocked on the door. Took a while, but eventually it opened. Mrs. Higgins looked older, frilier, relying on a cane. But her eyes were sharp. Joshua? She squinted. Joshua Morgan? Hi, Mrs. Higgins, I said. Can I come in? She ushered me into her living room, which smelled of lavender and old paper. She made me tea, her hands shaking slightly. I haven't seen you since you were a boy, she said. You look like her. You have Maria's eyes. The mention of my mother made my throat tight. You knew her? We were friends, she said softly. She volunteered at the library. She was so terrified, Joshua. Terrified of your father. I found the diary, I said. I pulled the worn leather book from my jacket. Mrs. Higgins gasped. She reached out and touched the cover like it was a holy relic. I thought Robert destroyed this. I gave it to him. I had to. Why? He threatened my pension, she whispered, looking down. He was on the school board. He said if I didn't give him the lies Maria wrote, he would ensure I was fired and blacklisted. I was alone, Joshua. My husband had just passed. I needed the job. She started to cry. I failed her. And I failed you. You didn't fail me, I said, reaching across the table to hold her hand. You were the only one who was nice to me. I remember. You used to read to me when the other kids were at recess. You were so sad, she said. A child shouldn't be that sad. Mrs. Higgins, I'm going to stop him. I'm going to expose everything. But I need you. I need you to verify this diary. I need you to tell people that Robert coerced you. She looked frightened. He is a powerful man. He's a criminal, I said, and I have him cornered. But I need someone with integrity to stand up and say, this is the truth. Will you do that for Maria? She looked at the diary, then at me. She straightened her back, gripping her cane. He took a mother away from her son, she said, her voice hardening. I have lived with that guilt for 20 years. Yes, Joshua, I will help you. I drove Mrs. Higgins to a safe hotel near the gala venue. I didn't want her at her house when the storm hit. Then I went back to Marcus's place. It's done, Marcus said, spinning his chair around. I've synced the audio from the rolls with the video from the USB. I also added some visual aids, graphs showing the embezzlement. It's a masterpiece. We watched the final cut. It was 5 minutes of pure destruction. It started with Caleb's arrogance, cut to the photos of Sarah's bruises, played the audio of Robert ordering the cover-ups, and ended with the scan of my birth certificate and the trust fund documents. It's brutal, I said. It's justice, Marcus corrected. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. I have the surrender form, and I found something else. Robert has a safe in the floor of his closet. The combination was in his phone notes. He's getting sloppy. I took photos of the ledgers. Cash bribes to the zoning commission. Are you safe? I texted back. I'm at the hotel getting ready for the gala. He doesn't suspect a thing. He thinks I'm cowed. Stay strong. Tonight it ends. I put on my suit. It wasn't a tuxedo. It was a simple, dark gray suit I wore for client meetings. I wasn't going there to fit in. I was going there to work. "Ready?" Marcus asked. He was wearing a waiter's uniform he'd managed to procure. "Let's go crash a party," I said. As we drove to the Grand Hotel, I felt a strange calm. For years, I had been afraid of my father. Afraid of his voice, his disapproval, his power. But now, realizing that his power was built on terrified women and falsified documents, he didn't look like a giant anymore. He looked like a small, pathetic man standing on a house of cards. And I was the wind. The grand ballroom was a sea of black ties and sequins. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto the elite of the city. I stood in the shadows of the mezzanine, watching them. There was Robert shaking hands with the mayor. He looked regal, the picture of the benevolent patriarch. Evelyn was by his side, smiling that frozen, plastic smile. And there was Caleb. He was at the center table, laughing loudly, holding court. Sarah sat next to him, looking pale but composed. She wore high-neck lace to cover the bruises on her neck, and heavy makeup on her eye. "Status," I whispered into my earpiece. "I'm in the server room," Marcus's voice crackled. "Chloe got me in. I'm patching into the main projector feed now. Wait for the signal." The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC announced, "please welcome the recipient of this year's Leadership and Family Values Award, Mr. Caleb Morgan." Applause thundered. It made my stomach turn. Family values. The irony was suffocating. Caleb walked up the stairs, waving. He adjusted the microphone. "Thank you," he said, oozing charm. "This award means the world to me. You know, my father always taught me that a business is only as strong as the family behind it." I signaled Marcus. "Not yet. Let him dig the hole deeper." "We Morgans believe in integrity," Caleb continued. "We believe in protecting those who can't protect themselves. My wife, Sarah," he gestured to her. "She didn't smile. She is my rock. And our daughter, Lily, she is the reason I work so hard. To build a future she can be proud of." "Now," I whispered. On the massive screen behind Caleb, the logo of Northstar Logistics flickered. Static cut across the image. The audience murmured. Caleb looked back, confused. Looks like we have a technical glitch." Then the audio blasted through the concert grade speakers. "She's 6, Robert. He hits her." It was Sarah's voice, clear as day. The room went deadly silent. Caleb froze. "Discipline is necessary," Robert's voice boomed. "Caleb is the face of this family. You need to support him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Robert stood up at his table, his face draining of color. He motioned frantically to the tech booth. "Cut it! Cut the feed!" But Marcus had locked them out. The screen changed. It wasn't a logo anymore. It was a video. Grainy footage from a home security camera Sarah had accessed. It showed Caleb throwing a vase at Sarah, screaming obscenities. It showed him shoving her into a wall. "Turn it off!" Caleb screamed, his voice cracking. "This is fake. This is AI." Then the image shifted to a document. HR internal memo. Sexual harassment settlement. "Pay her." Robert's recorded voice played over the image. "Then fire her for performance issues." The mayor stepped away from Robert like he was radioactive. I walked out of the shadows. I descended the main staircase, slow and deliberate. The spotlight, confusingly looking for a target, swung around and caught me. "Joshua," Robert whispered. He looked like he was seeing a ghost. I walked straight onto the stage. Caleb lunged at me, his face twisted in a feral snarl. "You ruined everything." This time I didn't let him hit me. I sidestepped his sloppy haymaker and shoved him. He tripped over the microphone cord and sprawled onto the floor. I picked up the mic. "I'm sorry to interrupt the party," I said, my voice echoing through the stunned hall. "But I think there's been a mistake with the award." I looked at Robert. He was gripping the back of his chair, shaking. "My name is Joshua Morgan," I said to the crowd. "For 28 years, I was told I was the mistake, the secret, the one who didn't belong. The screen behind me flashed the birth certificate. Mother, Maria Santos. This is my mother, I said. She didn't abandon me. She was blackmailed into giving me up by that man. I pointed at Robert. And that trust fund you see on the screen? That establishes me as the owner of 40% of Northstar Logistics. I turned to the board members sitting at table 1. As majority shareholder, I said, my voice steady, I am calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in Robert and Caleb Morgan, pending a criminal investigation into fraud, embezzlement, and domestic abuse. You can't do this, Robert screamed. Security. Remove him. The security guards moved forward, but then stopped. They looked at the screen. They looked at the mayor. They looked at me. Then Sarah stood up. She walked up the stairs to the stage. She stood next to me. She took the mic from my hand. It's all true, she said, her voice shaking but loud. He hits me. He hits our daughter. And Robert protects him. She reached into her purse and pulled out a stack of papers, the original surrender form and the bribe ledgers. She threw them onto the floor in front of the board members. We're done being quiet, she said. The silence broke. It was chaos. Reporters were flashing cameras. The board members were huddled, shouting. And then, the doors at the back of the hall burst open. Detective Miller wasn't there. It was the state police. Robert Morgan. Caleb Morgan. The officer's voice cut through the noise. You are under arrest. The sight of my father in handcuffs was something I had imagined 1,000 times. But the reality was far less cinematic than my dreams. It was pathetic. Robert didn't fight. He didn't yell. He just deflated. The arrogant posture, the steely glare. It all evaporated. He looked like an old, tired man in a tuxedo that suddenly seemed too big for him. Caleb, on the other hand, was screaming. Do you know who I am? He shouted as 2 officers dragged him toward the exit. I'm the vice president. I'm the face of this family. Not anymore, buddy, one of the cops muttered, pushing his head down to get him into the cruiser. I stood on the steps of the hotel, watching the flashing red and blue lights paint the scene in surreal colors. The valet stand, usually reserved for Ferraris and Bentleys, was now a parking lot for police cruisers. Sarah stood beside me, shivering in the night air. I took off my suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. Ideally, I said. That went well. She let out a short, shocked laugh. Ideally. Evelyn was being escorted out separately. She wasn't in cuffs yet, but she was being taken in for questioning regarding the coercion of my mother. She walked past me, her head high, refusing to make eye contact. Even in defeat, she couldn't acknowledge me. Then they brought Robert out. He stopped when he saw me. The officer tried to nudge him forward, but he planted his feet. Joshua, he croaked. I looked at him. I didn't feel the fear anymore. I didn't feel the anger either, just a profound sense of pity. You have destroyed your own family, he said. Are you happy? The stock will tank. The legacy is ruined. The legacy was a lie, Dad, I said calmly. And I didn't destroy the family. You did that 26 years ago when you forced my mother to sign that paper. I did it for the company, he snapped, a flash of the old tyrant returning. I did it to protect the name. Well, I said, looking at the news vans pulling up. The name is all over the news now. I hope it was worth it. I turned my back on him. Joshua, he called out. Joshua, we can make a deal. The trust. We can restructure. The officer shoved him into the car. The door slammed shut, cutting off his voice. I watched the caravan of police cars drive away. The flashing lights faded into the distance. I felt a hand on my arm. It was Mrs. Higgins. She had been watching from the lobby. She would be proud of you, she whispered. Maria would be so proud. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. For keeping the diary. For everything. Marcus walked up, holding a glass of champagne he'd swiped from a tray. So, he said, clinking his glass against my imaginary one. You're technically the boss now. Does this mean I get a raise? I think we can work something out. I smiled. The fallout over the next few hours was swift. The board of directors held an emergency meeting right there in the hotel conference room. With Robert and Caleb arrested and the evidence of fraud public, they had no choice. They appointed an interim CEO, Mr. Sterling, the one honest man on the board, and recognized my 40% stake. I wasn't the CEO yet. I didn't want to be. I had a lot to learn. But I was on the board. I had a voice. Around 2 a.m., I walked Sarah to her car, her real car, not the one bugged by her husband. Where will you go? I asked. My sister's place in Vermont, she said. It's quiet there. Lily can see the snow. You have the best lawyers in the city now, I told her. Paid for by the company. You'll get full custody. I'll make sure of it. She hugged me. It was a fierce, desperate hug. You saved us, Josh. You really saved us. We saved each other, I said. I watched her drive away. I walked back to my truck. My old, beat-up Ford F-150. It was parked next to a yellow Lamborghini that was now being towed away by the city impound. I got in my truck. I didn't turn the radio on. I just drove. For the first time in my life, I wasn't driving away from something. I was driving towards something. I was Joshua Morgan, and I was finally free. The morning after the arrest, I didn't wake up to a fanfare. I woke up to a ringing phone. It was 5 a.m. The sun wasn't even up yet, but the vultures were circling. My phone screen was lit up with notifications. CNN, Fox Business, The Wall Street Journal. The headline was everywhere. Logistics empire crumbles. The Morgan scandal. I sat on the edge of my bed in my small apartment. My hands were shaking, not from fear this time, but from the sheer weight of what I had done. I had pulled the trigger, and the explosion was massive. But I knew, deep down, that the war wasn't over. Robert and Caleb were in custody. Sure, but a beast like Northstar Logistics doesn't die quietly. It thrashes. I drove to the headquarters. It was a glass monolith in the center of the financial district. Usually, I entered through the service bay around the back to check on the fleet. Today, I parked my Ford F-150 right in the reserved spot marked CEO. The valet looked at me, confused, then terrified as he recognized my face from the news. I walked into the lobby. The silence was heavy. Employees were huddled in clusters, whispering. When they saw me, the whispering stopped. Some looked at me with hostility. I was the guy who might cost them their jobs. Others looked at me with something else. Hope? I took the elevator to the top floor. Robert's floor. The office was exactly as he had left it. A half-drunk glass of scotch on the mahogany desk. A gold pen uncapped. It smelled like him, expensive leather and arrogance. I didn't sit in his chair. Couldn't. Instead, I stood by the window, looking out over the city. Enjoying the view? I turned. You knew, I said. You knew about the coercion. You knew about my mother. I knew Robert was a difficult man, Julian shrugged, taking a sip. But let's not dwell on the past. We have a crisis to manage. The stock is down 40% in pre-market trading. The board is panicking. They want to liquidate. Let them panic, I said. No, Julian tooted, walking closer. That's the mechanic in you talking. Think like a CEO, Josh. You own 40%. If this company goes under, you inherit nothing but debt and lawsuits. You need to stabilize the ship. And let me guess, I crossed my arms. You're the one to help me do that? I know where the bodies are buried, Julian smiled. It was a reptilian smile. I know how to calm the SEC. I know which judges to call to delay the hearings. I can save your inheritance, Josh. All I need is for you to sign a temporary power of attorney. Just until the dust settles. You're not ready for this. You fix trucks. Let me fix the company. He slid a document across the desk. It looked standard. Temporary administrative control. For a second, I hesitated. He was right. I didn't know how to handle the SEC. I didn't know how to manage a billion-dollar collapse. I was drowning. But then I remembered the diary. The entry from November. He says he will take him. I looked at Julian. You were there that night, weren't you? What night? The night my mother signed the papers. In 1998. Julian's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. I might have been present to notarize. It was a standard procedure. Standard procedure, I repeated. I didn't sign the paper. I picked it up and ripped it in half. I'm not Robert, I said. And I'm not the scared little kid you used to manipulate. You're fired, Julian. Julian's face hardened. The mask dropped. You can't fire me. I'm a partner in the firm. And without me, this company is dead in a week. You think you've won? You've just cut the head off a hydra. You have no idea what's coming. Get out, I said. He set his glass down. You'll come crawling back, Joshua. And when you do, the price will be double. He stormed out. I was shaking again. I sat down on the leather sofa, burying my face in my hands. He was right about one thing. I was in over my head. But I wasn't alone. I called Mr. Sterling, the interim CEO. We need a forensic audit, I told him. Not just of the company, of Julian, of the law firm, everything. That will take months, Joshua, Sterling said, his voice weary. And it will cost millions we don't have. I don't care, I said. I want to know everything. And Sterling? I want to rehire someone. Who? Everyone who was fired for speaking up. The HR assistant. The warehouse manager in Jersey. Everyone Robert silenced. Bring them back. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers, depositions, and angry shareholders. I barely slept. I lived on coffee and adrenaline. But the real battle wasn't in the boardroom. It was in the courtroom. I went to the arraignment hearing. I had to see them. Robert and Caleb were brought in wearing orange jumpsuits. The sight was jarring. Caleb looked like he hadn't slept in days. His hair was messy, his eyes wild. He kept scanning the room looking for... What? An escape? A fan club? Robert looked older. He shuffled. When he saw me in the front row, he didn't look away. He stared at me with a hatred so pure it felt like physical heat. The prosecutor read the charges. Fraud. Embezzlement, assault, coercion. The list went on for 20 minutes. Then the judge asked for a plea. Not guilty, Robert said, his voice rasping. Not guilty, Caleb echoed. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. They were going to fight. Of course they were. But then the twist happened. The one I didn't see coming, but should have. During the break, I saw Caleb's public defender arguing with Robert's high-priced attorney. There was pointing, shouting. Later that afternoon, the news broke. Caleb Morgan seeks plea deal. Offers testimony against father. I sat in my truck outside the courthouse and laughed. I laughed until I cried. The golden child. The face of the family. The moment the pressure got real, he cracked. He was throwing Robert to the wolves to save his own skin. It was poetic. It was tragic. But Julian was still a problem. He was making rounds on talk shows, painting me as the unstable, illegitimate son who had a vendetta against his successful family. He was spinning the narrative, trying to tank the stock price so his partners could buy it back cheap. He was good. Too good. I needed to stop him. I went back to Sarah. She was staying at a rental house in Vermont, just like she said. I drove up there on a rainy Saturday. The house was small, tucked away in the woods. When I pulled up, I saw Lily in the front yard. She was wearing rain boots and jumping in puddles. She wasn't looking over her shoulder. She plugged the drive into her laptop. Audio playback, Julian. The medical records are taken care of, Robert. Dr. Evans changed the date. As far as the insurance is concerned, it was a pre-existing condition. You won't have to pay out the medical leave. Robert. Good. And the other matter. Julian. The trust? I forged the signature on the amendment. Joshua can't touch the principal until he's 45. By then, the shell company in the Caymans will have drained it. It's untraceable. Robert. You're a magician, Julian. Julian. I'm not a magician. I'm a lawyer. Just make sure the wire transfer hits my account by Friday. My blood ran cold. He had forged the amendment to my trust. He wasn't just an accomplice. He was the architect of the theft. This is it, I whispered. This proves he forged documents. This proves he stole. Take him down, Josh, Sarah said, her eyes fierce. For all of us. I drove back to the city that night. I didn't go to the media. I went straight to Detective Miller, former Detective Miller. He had resigned in disgrace but was cooperating with the state police to reduce his sentence. I went to the state prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Vance. I played the tape. Ms. Vance listened, her face unreadable. When it finished, she leaned back. This is wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and since the wire transfer crossed state lines, it's federal. Can you get him? Mr. Morgan, she smiled. A shark-like smile that I finally appreciated. I can get him before breakfast. The next morning, Julian was live on a morning talk show, explaining how tragic it was that the family business was being ruined by an inexperienced mechanic. Mid-interview, the camera caught movement in the wings. Federal agents walked onto the set. I watched from my office TV as they cuffed Julian on live television. The look on his face, pure, unadulterated shock, was better than any award. With Julian gone, the resistance crumbled. The board members who had sided with him resigned en masse. I was left with a broken company, a hollowed-out building, and 1,000 employees looking to me for answers. I called a town hall meeting, not in the boardroom but in the main warehouse. I stood on a pallet of tires, wearing my work boots and jeans. I looked out at the mechanics, the drivers, the logistics coordinators. These were my people. My name is Joshua, I said into the megaphone. I'm not a genius. I'm not a business leader of the year. I'm the guy who knows that if you don't change the oil, the engine blows. There was a ripple of laughter. This company has been run on fear for too long, I continued. That ends today. We are going to rebuild. It's going to be hard. We're going to lose contracts. We're going to have to work double shifts. But we're going to do it honestly. No more bribes. No more cover-ups. If you have a problem, you come to me. My door is open. Literally. I took the door off the hinges this morning. Applause started. Slow at first, then building. It wasn't polite applause like at the gala. It was real. It was loud. We rebranded. North Star Logistics was dead. We became Phoenix Fleet Services. A bit cliché? Maybe. But it fit. We were rising from the ashes. 6 months later, the dust had settled. Robert was sentenced to 25 years. He would likely die in prison. Caleb got 10 years thanks to his plea deal. He was sent to a minimum security facility. But from what I heard, the other inmates didn't take kindly to rich kids who beat women. He wasn't having a good time. Evelyn avoided jail time by pleading ignorance, but she was bankrupt. The civil lawsuits from the victims took everything. The last I heard, she was working as a hostess at a restaurant in another state, living in a small apartment. Karma has a sense of humor. I was sitting in my office, now a modest room on the second floor, closer to the action, when Sarah walked in. She looked radiant. She had cut her hair short. She was wearing a simple dress, not the couture armor she used to wear. Hey boss, she teased. Hey. I stood up. How's Vermont? Cold? She laughed. But good. Lily started school. She made a friend. She invited a boy over for a playdate. And she didn't flinch when his dad came to pick him up. That hit me hard. That's great, Sarah. I came to give you this. She handed me a small box. I opened it. It was the watch. Robert's watch. The Patek Philippe he always wore. The one that symbolized his power. The lawyers sent it to me with his personal effects, she said. I don't want it. I thought maybe. I looked at the watch. It was worth more than my first house. It was heavy, gold, and cold. No, I said, closing the box. I don't want it either. So what do we do with it? We sell it, I said. And we start a scholarship fund. For kids who need a way out. Sarah smiled. I like that. We walked out of the building together. The sign out front was new, Phoenix Fleet Services. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden glow over the concrete. I looked at my truck. It was still the same old Ford, maybe a few more miles on it. But it felt different now. It wasn't an escape vehicle anymore. It was just a truck. "You want to grab dinner?" Sarah asked. "Lily wants to see her Uncle Josh." "I'd love to," I said, as I drove behind Sarah's car. A sensible Volvo SUV now. I realized something. I had spent my whole life fighting to be part of a family that didn't want me. I had bled for it. I had been punched for it. But family isn't about blood. It isn't about whose name is on the building. Family is the people who stand next to you when the walls come down. It's been a year since the gala. A year since the night that changed everything. I stood in the quietest place in the city, the Oakwood Cemetery. The grass was green, manicured, and peaceful. I held a bouquet of white lilies, Lily's idea. I found the stone. It was small, tucked away in the corner under a willow tree. For years, Robert hadn't even put a headstone here. Just a marker number. One of the first things I did with my inheritance was buy this stone. Maria Elena Santos' beloved mother. She fought for love. I knelt down and placed the flowers on the cool granite. "Hey, Mom," I whispered. The wind rustled the leaves, sounding like a sigh. "I did it," I said. "I found out the truth. You didn't leave me. You saved me." I traced the letters of her name. I thought about the diary. I thought about the pain she must have felt, signing those papers, thinking she was giving me a better life, even as it broke her heart. She sacrificed her happiness so I wouldn't be crushed by Robert's machine. "I hope you can see me now," I said, my voice choking up. "I'm not the scared kid anymore. I'm running the company, but I'm running it right. We treat people like humans. We pay them fair wages. We don't hide things." I sat there for a long time just talking to her. I told her about Sarah, about Lily, about how Mrs. Higgins comes to the office every Tuesday to have lunch with me. I told her about Robert. I visited him once, last month. It was brief. He sat behind the glass, looking small and gray. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just asked about the stock price. That was all he had left. Numbers. I told him the stock was recovering, but it was slow. He nodded, looking disappointed. He couldn't understand that we were building something sustainable, not just profitable. I left after 10 minutes. I didn't hate him anymore. I just didn't need him. "I forgive you," I said to the headstone. "Not because what happened was okay, but because I can't carry the anger anymore. It's too heavy. And I have other things to carry now." I stood up, brushing the grass off my knees. The sun was breaking through the clouds, casting long beams of light across the cemetery. I walked back to my car. I had finally traded in the old Ford. Not for a Lamborghini, not for a Rolls-Royce. I bought a truck, a new one, reliable with top-rated safety features. A truck that could work, but also a truck that could carry a child seat in the back for when I took Lily to the zoo. I got in and started the engine. It purred, a solid, dependable sound. I drove out of the cemetery gates and onto the highway. The city skyline rose in the distance. I could see the Phoenix Fleet building, a small speck in the concrete jungle. I thought about the question people always ask me, was it worth it? Destroying your own family? And the answer is always the same. I didn't destroy my family. I found it. I looked at the passenger seat. There was a drawing there done in crayon. It was a picture of a giant yellow sun, with stick figures holding hands underneath. One was labeled Mommy, one Lily, and the tall one with the messy hair was labeled Josh. I smiled. I rolled down the window, letting the wind hit my face. Felt fresh. Felt clean. I merged onto the freeway, heading toward Sarah's house for Sunday dinner. The road ahead was long, and there would be potholes. There would be traffic. There would be breakdowns. But for the first time in my life, I was in the driver's seat. And I knew exactly where I was going. So that's my story. It's a messy one, full of bruises and betrayals, but it's mine. If there is one thing I want you to take away from this, It's this: your worth is not defined by the people who are supposed to love you, but by the people who actually do. We grow up thinking that family is an unbreakable bond, a sanctuary. But sometimes, family is the very thing holding us back. Sometimes, the golden child is just a prisoner in a gilded cage, and the black sheep is the only one free enough to see the truth. Robert and Caleb had everything: money, power, status, but they had nothing. They were hollow. Breaking the cycle of abuse is the hardest thing you will ever do. It requires you to be the villain in their story so you can be the hero in yours. It requires you to speak when your voice shakes. It requires you to walk away from the table when respect isn't being served. But I promise you, the peace you find on the other side is worth every struggle. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member to protect your own peace? Or maybe you've been the black sheep who realized it was actually a badge of honor. Let me know in the comments. Drop a good if you think I did the right thing, or tell me what you would have done differently. I read every single comment because you guys, you strangers on the internet who listen to my story, you're part of my circle now too. Stay strong, drive safe, and never let anyone punch you into a wall and tell you it's your fault.